Max Gorlin, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell from the Hawthorn Footy Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hello friends, you've got MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you're well, and a massive week of fantasy footy has absolutely gone underway for us. One round of the multi-bye rounds has been done and completed. We have two more left to go to talk about all things fantasy footy and to actually really think on exactly what this means for us. Thought I'd better get Kane back on the episode. Hello mate, how are you?
Very well, MJ. Yourself?
I'm well. There is plenty to talk to. We're streaming this live for our Patreons as well. They're getting in a nice little exclusive screening into this. It's one of just a few rewards our Patreons get. If you want to go and check out our Patreon supported tier groups, all the links are at coachespanel.tv. Kane, there are 6 teams that have just come off the bye rounds. I want to talk about them. There are some brand new Ultimate Footy DPPs that have just landed in the past day or two. Day or two meaning hours or days, depending on when you're listening to this. But, mate, right out of the gate, there's a little bit of a game change that happened over the weekend, got confirmed by the AFL, and now we at least know from a fantasy coach's perspective how these next couple of weeks we get to navigate it. You want to walk us through what the formats have done and then some of the impacts this means for us as the fantasy footy community?
Sure, MJ. Well, if we start with AFL Fantasy, no change this week. Still our 3 trades that we had planned. We've just gained one additional trade the following week in round 14, which maybe I'll go through the other formats before I get into maybe my point. But
sure.
The other 2 formats added 2 more trades in total, SuperCoach and DT, with the ability to move 4 a week. So you've got a potential 8 trades between now and the end of the buys if you so choose to use them. So maybe if we start with AFL Fantasy,
sure.
This is probably the one that I was the most surprised with. A game that preaches engagement the most. And I will preface by saying that I don't envy having to make a decision like this. I know that's really hard, and a lot of the decisions and people's reactions are governed by self-interest, which I think we're all guilty of as wanting to play this game competitively and finish as high as we can in the rankings. If it worked out in our favor, I think people were pretty happy with the decision they made of not many trades and just the one. If people unfortunately were loaded with, West Coast and Richmond players, they're in a world of hurt. So for me personally, I would have loved to see at least 2 more trades in that format. I just feel like having one, the people that are advantaged by that choice of one compared to people that are disadvantaged, that gulf is massive. I feel like by making it 2, the people that were already in a good spot, obviously they can strengthen their team, but at least people that are in a bad spot can push to actually having 18. So again, the decision's been made. We're stuck with it. I don't feel like it's awfully fair at all. I don't think there would have been really any harm to the competition to have 2 more, which again, whether they wanted to make that be like DT and SuperCoach did with the ability to move 4 a week. I just feel like that's not enough, especially when there's some really popular guys.
Well, you think about it, you got Dusty, Martin, for instance. Shai Bolton, Andrew Gaff, Shannon Hearn.
Jaden Short was a guy that, when you have a great preseason like he did, he got a lot more popularity than maybe he would have otherwise. So ownership's quite high. And the thing as well, MJ, the main thing in this is, we didn't know about this move of the buys in round 4 or 5. We found out, even the possibility only about a week ago, really now.
Yep.
So you can't plan for those things. Again, DT and SuperCoach, I think it's light again. When you've got people who could be having between 3 to 4 of these guys, and they've spent the whole year and preseason planning to have that split right, and now you could be taking 4 players out of a buy round on a week's notice and put them in another buy round. It just seems like to me, it's awfully harsh. Would have loved to see them just add more. Because like I said, I don't think it really hurts the people that are in a good spot as much as it hurts the people who are in a bad spot. If it can just really, you could be having, 13, 14 players, and especially in a format where there's limited trades, having to go sideways just to even field a team. Because if you don't get to 18 in one of those bye rounds, like you can lose 300 points in a round. And honestly, that is a season wrecker when you're chasing, the ranks that people in the coaches panel are chasing. So I felt like it was awfully harsh. Again, obviously we've just got to get on with it and do the best we can. But I just feel like we did miss an opportunity there to keep people engaged. And I think a lot of people who have a really tough this round and the following round in particular will lose interest, and no one wins if that happens. So yeah, I wanted to put that on the table because I know people have been raising their concerns and they've been getting shot down. And obviously, like a footy game, the umpire's not going to change his call. They're not going to change their call now.
Nope.
But I still think it's important to express that desire and maybe try to explain why that would have been a good decision for the game. Because like I said, it's just going to really ruin your season for no reason. And a lot of people put a lot of time into this. They plan it out. And even just, diving deeper into it, there's people that we all know in our teams that we pass on because we go, well, I'm loaded in that bye. Like you think about people that maybe would have looked at a Darcy Parish, but they would have started the season with a Bont, a McRae, a Zach Merritt, a Walsh, a Cripps, a Lyons, a Neal, a Gaff, with this expectation that I can't fit a Darcy Parish in. I can't fit maybe a Dyson Heppel in a DT format where he's super cheap because of the bye. So it's just, it's a real kick in the guts when all of a sudden you get to this round when you thought you would be, at least organized for, like most of our listeners have been for 12 weeks. I just thought the extra trades would have made it really nice, but we're in that position now. And I guess we move on to strengthening our team with ideally players that have already had their first bye.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the case. So as a recap for you, if you're trying to figure out what's happening in the formats, it is best 18 for the remaining 2 rounds of the multi-bye rounds. SuperCoach and Dream Team have added 2 additional trades to the game. The good news is you can use them at any point in time you like. And they've also increased the maximum amount of trades you can make in this coming round 13 and in round 14. So you can make a maximum of 4 of your remaining trades to go, while AFL Fantasy, as Kane's mentioned. Nothing changed this week. You've got 3 trades a week as standard for them, and then just the additional 1 trade. And I think of all the formats, that's probably the one that you're hurting the most with luck not going your way. You need skill to win the game, but you also need luck to fall your way. And unfortunately, this is another variable of luck that is outside of coaches' control, so to say. And they've got to find a way to navigate it. And great coaches find a way to make even the most difficult of circumstances move in their favor. So right out of the gate, Kane, it is upgrade season for coaches, no doubt about it. There have been 6 teams that have coming off the multi-bye round this week. And I thought maybe it would be good to kind of almost look club by club a little bit rather than position by position at who are some players we should be considering. Because for some, there's different focuses they've got. For some, they're in leagues and they're not playing and they don't care about ranks right now. So they're just using this couple of fortnight of remaining to improve their team. Others, they're going hell to leather this week and next to really make a rankings boost. Others have plenty of cash set aside. Some are really scraping the barrel to get there. So let's talk about the Gold Coast Suns. One of the most popular names in the preseason is confirmed to play this week, Matt Rowell. We can talk about some other names in a minute, but is Rowell a legit option this week after not playing for a couple of months of footy? Can we go back to the well to Matt Rowell?
Not for me straight off the bat. I think one, obviously the injury impacted score way back in round 1. Funny that he played West Coast round 1. He's going to come back against Freo all those weeks later. But the break even's, nice and high for, a guy coming off a long time out of the game. I don't think there's going to be a score. Again, it is Matt Rowell. In the limited sample size he's had, he can clearly score. But I just feel like if he does have a good score, maybe it validates it for the following week. Yeah. But he's just a guy that I'd love to have a look at. There's clearly injury concerns. There's risk. And really, is he going to play his full allotted minutes straight off the bat? Seems unlikely for me.
Yeah.
So he's definitely on my radar, especially when people are light on cash. I think he's a great guy to round out your midfield. That would be a really nice option if he's down at, your M8. You'd feel pretty comfortable, especially what you're paying for him. But I feel like you're sort of forcing the issue for no reason just to grab him straight off the bat.
Yeah.
Where I think it's always interesting is at the other end of the spectrum, you've got a guy like Tuke Miller who's been unbelievable. Nice. Frankly, way beyond what even I expected he could do. I sort of thought him as a 100 guy throughout his career. But then you see that shift in game style that, the Suns are the best fantasy team this year in total points, which is insane.
It's crazy when you say it like that.
And it's those marks. It's that possession game that they're playing. And
yeah,
Miller's always been a great tackler, which we love in fantasy.
Yep.
But when you add that outside game, he's in the 115, 120 realm pretty much every week. Obviously, he showed the big ceiling game against the Hawks with the 160 and DT.
Yeah.
As good as that is, it really worries me paying that type of dollar for him with a row coming back in.
Yeah.
I just can't see how it has a positive impact. And when I'm paying that price, I think I can find some value elsewhere that can probably match him.
Yeah.
So for me, I understand why people are really attracted to him. Low ownership, again, big ceiling, really consistent. Only missed the one game due to the suspension. So there's nothing really body-wise. He's been a very durable player.
Yeah.
It just feels like when you're spending that top dollars, especially in a limited trades format where, again, just personally, I'm cash strapped. So if I can save 100K on a premium here, 150K, times 3, it's going to allow me another upgrade without burning a trade. And trades is what's getting really tricky, especially with the impact of this West Coast and Richmond game moving. It means that I'm probably just personally going to have to sideways premiums just to get 18 on the field.
Yep.
So I feel like to get what you're paying for with Miller, you probably want the 125. And I just don't know if that's realistic for him over the final, 10 games of the year.
Look, he's averaging 117 across the formats at the moment. You look at his average in contrast to what he's doing in other midfielders. He's ranked second of midfielders behind, based on average, against McRae, the only ahead option. Yeah, I'm not counting the one game of Luke Shuey, while in Supercoach, he's got an identical average to Jack Steele and Darcy Parish, and he's averaging more than Walsh, Merritt, and Duncan. So he's right. You're paying for the uniqueness of him, aren't you? More than anything else, is you're paying for that point of difference. Some other guys that you might be considering coming off the bye, Jack Bowes has been confirmed. He's also coming off an injury. So that's an interesting one to consider. Jack Lukosius is defensive eligible, and he's had a nice couple of weeks as a low pickup. Probably feels more like a super coach option. Given, he scored, I think he's averaging about 110 in the past 2 weeks. Brandon Ellis is
you start thinking again with these guys, does the coach just have that spike because Bowes is out of the side? And also,
that's right.
The other hard thing, I think, which is really interesting dynamic that it's worth bringing up now because it does impact all of these guys that we're considering, is especially in the back line.
Yeah.
The bar is, again, we've spoken about
so
high.
Really,
it's really high, but they're all actually around 14 guys. Like if you really could pick your back line afresh now, you want Crisp, you want Lloyd, you want Mills, you want Laird. Like you're starting there. So when you've got those guys chewing up real key positions, doing it each week, doesn't really matter of position for those guys. They just find a way. We've spoken about this before, MJ. Are you better being patient? And even if it means you don't get that premium in this week, could waiting and getting a Mills versus a Lukosius catch up maybe that 100 points you're losing in maybe 1 week at worst over the final 10? And that's what it feels like for me with a guy like Lukosius and maybe even Bowes to that extent. Are you just capping your scoring potential by getting them now because you just you've got the cash to spend or you've got an upgrade that you want to make? I think if you're doing that, they really need to be great value. And I feel like with their form, maybe Bowes is in a couple of weeks if he sort of completely bottoms out. But we've just missed a run of LaCoach's game. So for me, he's not really there. Brandon Ellis, you mentioned, I think is a guy that you can round out your midfield in DT with him. He had a really rough stretch of 3 games. The encouraging thing in that for me is the team was really bad.
Yeah.
And that's when Brandon, he needs the team to be, doesn't have to be great. Clearly, he was scoring when they were losing games too, but they have to have that ball control. And you look at his scores that were poor.
Yep.
Again, 2 of them in particular. Brisbane, that was their worst game of the year by far. They were horrendous.
Yeah.
Geelong at GMHBA,
Geelong just
notoriously one
owned
of the hardest
possession.
games.
Yeah.
And then the Saints, that was a funny game as well. They were up and about. It was sort of even, but he just had a poor game with a 73. But you look prior to that, he had a stretch from round 2 to 7 where he was, with the 169 he had against Collingwood, which is clearly an outlier. It's a score you've missed. But he showed he can be 105, 110 most weeks. And I look at the fixture, and it's pretty good. Fremantle, Port, North, Richmond, GWS. That's a pretty good 5. And that he's going to be on the park. Gold Coast aren't going to be doing anything really fancy. They just need to be getting wins all the way throughout the season. We'll talk about some other sides in this group of 6 that you do worry about bringing in a premium, because are they just going to shake the whole thing up? I think we know with Brandon Ellis, having a Matt Rao probably helps him. If it's another player to win the ball and help them possess the ball, that's great for him. So I think in the Gold Coast realm, the one that's actually the most appealing to me is Ellis.
I agree.
Just due to that price. And the funny thing is, MJ, if you look at that point, if you go up to round 7, Brandon Ellis scored 821 points in detail.
Oh.
You think about what Tuke Miller did after those same 7 games, he was 801. So very good, but Brandon had 20 points on him at that point. So
true.
When there's now 160K between them, I think that band is going to be a lot closer in the run home.
Yeah, I like that call. If we were to take our eyes over to a fellow expansion team in GWS Giants, there's probably one guy that everybody's eyes go straight towards, and that's Lachie Whitfield. Would have been in probably along with the likes of Rory Laird, Jake Lloyd, would have been in our starting teams as one of the most popular defensive premiums, and then that internal bleeding or liver or spleen or whatever was his problem internally, that meant he actually couldn't get on the field in round 1. He's had a good couple of weeks. He's back off the bye round. Only hesitation coaches might have, there's probably 2. One, he was seen just jogging laps at training this week. Take it or leave it, what that can mean. That could be load management. It could be a lot of different things. But that fixture for North Melbourne this week and the next couple of weeks, while it looks inviting on paper, it is layered with some potential tag targets. What's your take on Lachie Whitfield?
Well, MJ, we spoke about this a lot in the preseason, especially in the 50. And my stance on these type of guys is I'd rather ride with them and know what their ceiling can be than spend every weekend cheering against them. So I'd rather be one of those guys that if he's got a high ceiling, pre-season, the 2 we used, in particular in the forward line, was Dangerfield and Dunkley. These are guys that can take the competition away from me.
Yeah, they can.
I'd rather be with them, and Lachie Whitfield fits into that category. Now, there are going to be people, and I think it's more if you're maybe further down the ranks, this is where this comes into play. Personally, I'm doing quite well, so I'm probably more protecting my position, and taking a guy like Lachie Whitfield in my team gives me that comfort that someone's not going to just have Lachie Whitfield and I don't, and he goes on a run of 150 for 3 weeks.
Yep.
And I'm in a world of hurt. I think the contrarian play of not picking him is for someone who wants to jump the rankings, and they're hoping for an injury. They're hoping for a tag, which you're alluding to with this North Melbourne game. But personally, if I'm, not just doing it to be contrarian to, hope things go my way, I like to ride with these guys that have the big ceiling. And Lachie Whitfield is that guy. Yes, there's body concerns, which is, always risky in a limited trades game. yes, GWS is not quite contending. You know, they're still in the band of possible.
Yeah.
That gap in the top 8, realistically,
It's elimination final at best. Yeah, at best.
Yeah, and it looks like, honestly, the top 8's sort of set.
Yeah,
Now,
I think so.
the good thing for them in a way is they still need to play it out, I feel, just to start getting some positive momentum going into next season. I don't think they're a team that just sandbag with kids, because to be honest, they don't really have any other kids to show off. They've already showed off what they've got. They've exposed the underbelly of their list. We've seen guys that we never thought we'd see in the AFL playing now. So I think they've done that. They just need to say, if we can finish the season winning 5 of the last 7 or something like that, you feel really good going into next year. So I want to ride with a guy like Lockie Whitfield. I know on paper North Melbourne's a great matchup. Yes, there's been some guys get tagged. And I've heard some people say that Lockie Whitfield's never really had a great run against North Melbourne recently. I had a look into that, and he hasn't played them since he's really been what I would classify as
relevant.
Real Lockie Whitfield. Yeah, there's some games there where really, he had a poor game, but it wasn't anything where I think that's, a reason to be scared of him now. I personally think he does well on the weekend. He's a guy that you'd love to throw the VC on.
Yeah,
he's the ultimate VC type of player. So I'm not scared off by it. Bailey Scott did a job on Brad Hill. Kane Turner's been doing some jobs. But at the end of the day, this is Lockie Whitfield. This is a guy that is one of the best workers in the game, one of the best burst scorers in the game, can put up a 40.5 minute. You could think he's on track for a poor score, and he turns into a great score. So, that's a guy that I want to be with. Josh Kelly, MJM, is clearly AFL Fantasy. He's the most valuable one.
Yeah, with that
He's got
forward
more trades
status
to move him out, and he's got the forward status. That's huge. Definitely comes into calculations in DT and SuperCoach. I think he's one of the most appealing guys in this buy round for a midfielder. So I think he's relevant there. But again, you've always got in the back of your mind there is risk. It is Josh Kelly. There's body concerns. But at the same time, he hasn't had his big ceiling game.
That's probably the biggest thing, isn't it? You haven't seen that
really
140-plus game.
Yeah. But, I look at it with him and I go, that's coming. I haven't missed it yet. Whereas I know some people say, oh, maybe the ceiling's not there. The thing about a Josh Kelly ceiling game is it's big. So, it couldn't be a thing where he's averaging 100 and then he pops his 160 plus and you go, oh, it's a good season. He's averaging, 107, 108. So that's encouraging to me. And I look at that fixture and I go, between North, Carlton, Hawthorn, in that next 3, I just feel like there's a ceiling game in there. I just feel like there's one where he just goes bang. So I think
you're right, he's got ceiling. His best ever score in SuperCoach was a 205 against the Blues back in 2018. His best ever fantasy and dream team score was a 166 that same year against the Suns. So you're right, historically it's there. I'm interested to get your take on a couple other guys before we move away. I think Tim Taranto looks like he's going to be a clear top tier guy through the midfield in dream team and fantasy. You're paying top dollar for him now, but in terms of scoring consistency and as a captaincy option most weeks he is, I wouldn't touch him in SuperCoach. Just personally, he's not as impactful. And then there's probably 2 other guys I'd be keen to get your take on. I'm all on the Nick Haynes train, so I might be a little bit too close to that one, but I'm a big fan of in SuperCoach is about 300K, and he's got career years of being a 90s and high 80s averaging guy. He's back playing through that intercepting role. So for me in SuperCoach, he feels like hey, if you need a cheap D6 that could slide to D7, it's like 150K from Highmore. It's actually ridiculous. Just how crazy it actually is to be able to get away that trade. So I think Haynes is a nice little option across your formats, but certainly more SuperCoach favourable than the others. I suppose the other is Toby Green. The reason I want to bring him up is this.
The forward line's terrible. Was that why you want to bring it up?
Pretty much. And then to throw in the mix of that, it doesn't seem to matter who we get in. Our premiums are finding ways to get ruled out of playing multiple games. So what have we got to lose? Because we know Toby can score well. and has scored well this year. So T Green of the forward variety, an option?
I think he's an option, but I think there's a guy we're going to talk about. I might bring him forward next that I think makes this conversation a little bit tricky to bring in Toby. So back on Haynes, I do like it because it is so cheap. Like we're talking, he's down, 240K in DT on his starting price, like 411. Like that's a tier where if he can just get back to 85,
it's crazy.
It's probably enough. Again, I think there's another guy in that line that for 100K more, I think you will get a better points output. But it's a good little rule of thumb, MJ. It's very hard to go wrong when you trade in a guy who's got an injury-impacted score of 9 in DT that's about to roll out. Because if anything, you're going to probably get 50, 60, 70K in value if something ever happened to him. You know what I mean? Like it's just, you can slide him to the bench. Like it might be too soon for a Nick Haynes for a lot of teams in terms of, hey, I can't do any of my other upgrades. I'll just grab Nick Haynes as my D6 because I know he's going to play every game. But no, I think in SuperCoach, he's great because there's that jump. You know, he can be a 90 guy without too much stress, and it's a great run. Patrick Dangerfield's the reason you're not taking on a guy like Toby Green. Because in 2 weeks, MJ, they're going to be pretty comparable in price. Barring Dangerfield coming back and going nuts. If Dangerfield just goes, just say 100, you're probably only talking 50K in DT between those two. So for me, every day of the week, I'm taking on Dangerfield. It's a good opportunity this week to have a look at him on a Thursday night. And sort of plan around, okay, he scored this, his price is going to be around here. What do I have to do in my trades this week? You know, maybe you thought you're going to take this guy and you go, actually, I really didn't want Dangerfield. I'm just going to have to take a cheaper guy. So that's where these brand analysis and these types and your Nick Haynes do come in. Because it's not so much about them. It's about what does that 100K allow me? Like in the forward line, it's horrible. You know, if you haven't got Aaron Hall, you're paying top dollar for Aaron Hall. You know, if you haven't got Jack Zeeble, you're paying top dollar for Jack Zeeble. Both have body concerns. Dustin Martin hasn't had his bye yet, so you don't really want to be doing anything with him. Again, in AFL Fantasy, you've got some other really great options like we spoke about. You know, there's Josh Kelly, there's Hunter, there's Fife, there's Billings. There's heaps of guys they added that have given us options throughout the year. Whereas in the other formats, you don't have that. So when you've got a guy like Dangerfield who's rolled gold, I'd rather go, you know what, I'm going to take the cheap Nick Haynes and hope he averages 80 from now. Because at least that will get me a Dangerfield who I think's 100 plus. So Dangerfield's the one that everyone's looking at. The Cats have also got some of their real expensive guys. Tom Stewart's a guy that just does a job.
Mr. Reliable, isn't he?
Not too much. He'd be appealing. I think a lot of coaches do have, like we mentioned, the Lloyd, Mills, Laird, Crisp. So to get a guy that goes, you know what, locks my, back line away, comfortable.
It's a safe and comfortable
really
pick, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And safe's not wrong, but he's also not the guy that if you're chasing down, I need a big 150 this week.
Nah, it's not his style.
He's not your guy. So it all depends on what you're looking for out of your sides. Now, he might not need to be the 150 guy. Your point of difference in that back line and that ceiling, it might be your Callum Mills, who, given what he's delivered this year, is still incredibly low ownership, even amongst some of the top tiered teams. So that's where Stewart might become appealing, where you go, you know what, I'll get Whitfield in a week. I still got 2 premium defenders to go. Yeah, I could go down low, but I'm going to go for just the consistent, deliberate pick of Stewart. So I think he's an option. Mitch Duncan.
You're getting him at his lowest. You're getting him at his lowest, Stewart. So that, as I said, hard to go super wrong. You're not getting him at a big price. Duncan's
probably a week or two away.
Yeah, I think, again, there's a big break even due to the injury score against the Suns. I think there's a few people that are a bit scarred by Mitch Duncan.
It happens most years, doesn't it?
I think a lot of people have brought him in. You think back to the last year, a lot of people brought him in off that hamstring. He came out, went bang,
Yep.
We thought, okay, I thought I was going to get this guy cheaper in a week or two. Everyone scrambles to get on,
Yeah.
and then he has a really poor stretch of form. Now you throw in Dangerfield's going to be back.
Yeah, he will.
How does this impact a guy like Mitch Duncan? Like, is it going to be a lot? Like, ideally, what you want is if Duncan starts getting to, just to use D-team dollars, if he starts getting to 730, 740,
Yeah.
it's a lot more palatable. When it's 800 plus, I find it really hard because this is what he seems to do. Every time you expect him to do really well, he lets you down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then when no one's on him, he puts together a resume that says, how did we all miss this guy? So there's a little bit of that. And as I said, it's a tough price to pay. Like, it's just so much.
Yeah.
Again, Guthrie with the shoulder, he's obviously ruled himself out for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people did have him, loved what he did last year in a full midfield.
Yeah, followed it up
know
this
that he
year.
can just score. So he was ultra impressive. What about the Hawks? I think the Hawks is a really fascinating one. I think
the best. Yeah,
you go.
it's Tom Mitchell on name.
Correct.
But I don't think if he's the most important Hawk for us on the run home. I think the most important Hawk for us on the run home is Jai Newcomb, who they picked up in the mid-season draft. So it's not an upgrade, but he is the most important Hawk because he's been in that Hawthorn ecosystem, albeit at the Box Hill Hawks in the VFL, but he's been in and around that Hawthorn game style and structure. There's a lot of parallels between the way Sam Mitchell has been coaching in game style and emphasis as what we're seeing in the Box Hill Hawks as what Hawthorn have been attempting to do. They're clearly in the middle of a rebuild. You don't get yourself a rumoured, what was it, a 4-year deal out of the mid-season draft? What was it? Or a reported 4-year deal? Good money.
Salary of other rookies.
So clearly the club rate him. He adds something to a midfield that is a little bit bland, to be fair. No knocking on any of their midfielders. Like Shields is a worker. Warple is a tough nut. Mitchell's a Brownlow medalist. And O'Meara, had it not been for a couple of knee injuries, could have been a generational talent. So there's ability through there. But I think Newcomb's the most important Hawk that's going to come in. I actually think he plays this week. I think they're high on him.
That would be the top. A lot of coaches, MJ, would be thrilled with that because I think there's a lot of people's upgrades hinging on a guy.
Yeah, they need that one last downgrade. Yeah.
Yeah, especially because he's by free. That's the ultimate. That's the thing we all love this time of year. Again, I made an effort to watch a bit of Newcomb just to see the type of player he is because he's clearly appealing, like you said. If he's playing for starters, it's appealing. He's ticked every box at VFL level. Clearly, that's why he got picked up.
Yep.
He's by free. He seems to use the ball. He's more of a north-south type of guy. Like, no, he's got a quite good sense for where to put it to the guy's advantage. And he's a guy that likes to get forward. When you look at a lot of the Hawks mids, your Warples, your Mitchells, they like to go sideways a lot. Give the ball, handball. Like they're assist type of players. I think that's why there's always an appeal to put Wingard in there because Wingard's very north-south. He wants to attack the goals. He wants to get forward. He wants to run and carry. So I was impressed by Newcomb in that sense. Now, is that just because he's the best player in the team and he might be the best player in the league?
Maybe.
At that level, does he feel that confidence to break through, to take those kicks? But it was a little bit different because when I heard of the pick, I thought, like you said then, Warple, Mitchell, Shields, O'Meara, it's a bit same. Where's that burst? Just because you're an inside player doesn't mean you have to be slow. You look at what Clayton Oliver does. You look at what Bontempelli does. You look at what even Tom Liberatore does with a different type of build. Like, still dynamic guys.
Matt Crouch,
so if he's in there, you'd expect him to play a key role.
I agree. And I think he does.
Tom Mitchell, not very appealing for me. I just think, is he going to get those big points?
Well, he hasn't really been monster.
He's not been
No,
the
he's been very
monster.
good.
He's been very solid. He's been your 105 type guy in fantasy and DT. He's been your 110 guy in SuperCoach, which are perfectly fine with the odd one that really, really pops. But what he's given us this year, which we haven't seen from Tom from arguably his entire time at Hawthorn, is his scoring floor is considerably lower. And that game style that the Hawks are in the process of evolving doesn't seem to unite to that high fantasy friendly scoring from him week in and week out. And so I think if you're a Mitchell owner, he's fine. There's nothing to panic. He's not going to be the reason you lose your season.
Yeah, exactly. He's probably goes at the 105 you've got him at.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is like his first year at Hawthorn, I believe, or one of his 2 big years, he was the guy that no deviation, just big every week, just 120 odd pretty much every week, doesn't let you down.
Yep.
The other season, remember MJ, he did have the floor, but on the flip side, he had the bigger ceiling. He had 150 ceiling. And you look at this season, the high score is 133. There's 3 others above 120. Now, in the last 5 weeks, 3 of his biggest scores have come. Now, on the flip side, 2 of his lowest 3 have come as well.
Yeah.
And they're both, and awkwardly, the 2 low ones in that stretch are North and Gold Coast, where people probably had an expectation for a big
captaincy
score. So
scores.
for me, it just doesn't smell right. It doesn't feel right. Again, it just feels like he's not going to get this season to that level that we think of.
Yep, I think it's fair.
And now at his ownership, I think that's a guy that you can deviate a little bit and hope you find some better fortune. And maybe this is a good transition to another team that's off the bye and play as we record tomorrow night. Port Adelaide, for me, has a guy that, again, I spoke about Patrick Dangerfield being the guy that makes you not pick Toby Green. I think Dan Houston can be the guy that makes you question Nick Haynes.
True.
I think for 100K, Dan Houston, when healthy, that's always a risk with a shoulder. That's a one that, and it's already happened to him a couple of times, can linger, can reoccur. But I think at his price and the roles he can play in that team, where he can score in the midfield, score in defence. Port's just a great team. They're just great. They're just strong, and they're really fighting for that top 4. So there's no going to be foot off the gas. And I just think
not at all.
For 100K, I can see Houston putting 15 to 20 points on a Haynes a week.
Yep.
And I think he's a guy that's really appealing. When you start looking at your Tom Stewart's at 120, 140K more, you think over a 9-game stretch, like if you take away...
What's the gap?
Now, I know we always say that. It is hard to take away those scores, but if you believe that injury's not going to occur in those 10 rounds to go, him and Tom Stewart are basically the same player, average-wise. So to get a guy that much cheaper, like we were saying, what does that allow you to do?
And he's arguably got a higher ceiling than Stewart as well.
He absolutely does. So I think he's the guy that is the most appealing from Port. There's probably 2 you have to mention. I find it hard to pick this guy because I feel like you've missed the run, and that's Ollie Wines. Ultra impressive. I think we've all been waiting for this type of season from Ollie, and he's been awesome. He's just been flat out awesome, especially his most recent form. Super impressive. You could take him, over a Tom Mitchell. Maybe that's where you go unique.
Yeah, maybe.
Again, I think I like this guy more just because last year he did, well, if you're hoping what I'm hoping, last year Travis Boak started red hot. Unbelievable form. Just looked like a different player. Just incredible to play as well as he did, and he deserved his high finish in the Brownlow. This year, we haven't seen those big games. Like, look at this point of the season, he's averaging 96, MJ.
Yeah.
The funny thing with Travis is, this is his highest is 113, his lowest is 82.
In Dream Team and Fantasy.
In Dream Team. There's only 3 tons this season. So I think about a guy like Travis Boak, and I think, I probably see him as a 100 guy by season's end. So for me,
Yeah.
that says, okay, he's 105 on the
For the
run
rest.
home. And I look at some of these matchups coming up. Yeah, Geelong's tough, but at least it's at Adelaide Oval.
Yep.
Then you look at the next few. Gold Coast, Sydney, Hawthorn, Melbourne. Then you get
St Kilda.
St Kilda, Collingwood, GWS, Adelaide, Carlton. And then in round 23, you have
Important.
the Dogs. Now, depending on where that is, in terms of where they're at in the ladder, you know,
Venue,
are the Dogs confirmed top 2? Again, by that point in the season, you don't even, who knows?
Yeah.
But you think it's going to be important. I just look at that and I go, can you see a couple 120s with Travis Boak? It's like, again, he's 667 and he's 672. So really it's him and Brandon Ellis. You know, if you're looking in that basket of cheaper,
Ceiling.
you know, Brandon Ellis has the 105. Travis Boak has the 95. Now, you're not paying 105 average for Brandon Ellis. He's come back to earth a little bit with that tough stretch.
agree.
But I think those two are in a boat where you go, it only takes one big game for Travis Boak, and all of a sudden, that season average is looking really nice again.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think there's much risk there. I feel like if you get him, he's going to give you a 95. But he could give you a 115. Yeah, he could give you a 115, MJ. That's what he started the first half of last year with. So
I'm a really big rap on him.
If you're shopping for a bit of value, and as I say, like, it's not just 100K here. It's multiple weeks of doing that.
Yeah.
And if that Travis Boak matches that Tom Mitchell for 70K, it's a big win because this stuff adds up real quick. So I'm a big rap for Travis Boak. He just feels like a guy to me that would actually reflect on that and say, hey, I started super well last year. I really want to make an effort to be playing that footy I played in the first half in the back end. So for me, he's a guy that I'm really interested in just to see break even. You know, it's a little bit higher maybe than you'd want. It's 115. So again, for what I'm expecting, I'm going to call it base value. And I just feel like no one's giving him any respect. It was in 4% of teams, and those were teams that really were on from the jump. It's not, no one's got on since the season started because he hasn't had a stretch that's caught people's attention. But I feel like, I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, from now to the end of the season, I want that guy that I'm not paying big bucks for, but he's going to deliver equal to those guys that are in that 800K bracket.
I'm a really big rap on him in SuperCoach. While his ownership is considerably higher in that format, it's 19% of coaches own him in there. And he has only had 1 ton in his past month, which you go, oh, no, that's not good. But hang on. He's also had only 2 scores under 96 all year. And he's really only had the 1 ceiling game in SuperCoach. That was round 1 against the Roos. The rest are low hundreds or 120 or 121. So, yeah, you look at that fixture.
Maybe you go, that's good. I haven't missed the ceiling. Like that's the thing
That's
that
right.
You can put that spin on. So, again, I like to bet on these almost guys as people. Like I think at Brandon Ellis and I go, I trust this guy on the field, hard worker, like, you know what type of game he's going to play. Yes, some weeks he's not going to get the marks. He's not going to get the disposals. Yeah. And like Travis Boak, like you can never question that guy's.
Yeah, he's a workhorse.
Like you just know he's going to work for you.
Yeah.
And again, there's just something about him. And again, I'm toing and froing between those two. At the moment, it's Ellis just for a little bit of the cash and maybe the matchup. You know, maybe I think that, you know, just planning my side, like, you know, Boak's going to be there for me next week. You know, Geelong is a hard matchup. But I just feel like he's the type of guy that you really got to have on your radar because, yeah, he can deliver for you.
Yeah, I think
what about
so.
the last team, MJ? The last team, the North.
Oh, well, we don't have to spend a whole heap of time on this one because normally we'd say North Melbourne is the black hole of fantasy footy relevance. But they got a couple of guys. The big 2 forwards are the ones everyone's going to talk about. But maybe we'll go SuperCoach for just a second before we talk about those 2 big forwards. Talk to me about Ben Cunnington. Just a touch under 550,000 in that format, like $200 is what I'm talking about. He's averaging 120 in his last 5, and he's had 3 scores over 130. He's not value because like a Boak is cheaper, so he's not a value pick. But just 3% of the competition own him, and so What's your take on Ben Cunnington?
MJ, it's hard because he's at 550k now. I think we mentioned in the preseason, a guy like him who has shown triple figure ability at 440. He's competing with the Matt Rouse in that price range. So that was quite appealing. Obviously, the momentum of his preseason stocks was gone because he wasn't going to play round one. So it's always interesting when these guys come in. And the good thing for Ben is he has played from round 3 onwards. So there hasn't been in, out. Clearly, it's been the last 5 weeks, he's been electric. He's, like you said, he's got 3 scores above 130 in that format. He's got a 66 against Collingwood that sort of kept the price down. But even that just rolled out the previous week. So when you're at 550, again, it's getting to me for the getting what you pay for territory. I sort of see him as, he's averaging 103. It probably feels like 103 from now on in.
It's about right.
Do you find someone elsewhere? Like, you're paying more for him than Christian Petrarca.
Feels wrong, doesn't it?
Brayshaw is cheaper. It's just, Sam Walsh is 10k more. Like, I'd rather wait the week
and get some of
Sam
these
Walsh.
guys.
Yeah, personally, I would. And then I always worry about teams in North's position.
Yeah.
Now, Cunnington might be immune to this because he is so good. Like, he is genuinely one of the best players in the competition at what he does at extracting the ball and giving it off. Like, there really isn't other roles.
Yeah.
But sometimes, and we saw it last year with Luke McDonald, he became the most informed defender in the league.
Yeah.
When he had that switch. And coincidentally, it's the role that Zeeble and Hall are both having currently. It's the most prosperous role in football. But these things get thrown around. The buy happens. Players get moved in different positions. Some players, go in for surgery. Some players just get different roles just to see what happens. So there can be some opportunity there. Maybe North's not the team. Now, if someone took over the Zeeble and Aaron Hall role where you're getting 33 points from kickouts and switches alone, any player would become on our radar. You'd have to respect the role. But at this stage, I haven't seen anything from them that makes me really jump out. You're paying top dollar for Zeeble and Hall. Some people will feel comfortable with that. Some people won't. For me, it is probably a bit risky, especially when you're trading in players that the highly ranked coaches already have.
You're not making up any points with them. Let's be honest.
So, I'd look elsewhere, MJ.
Yeah, no, Zeeble for me is a no across all the formats. Like, without even thinking about it, for me, it's like, hey, you've missed the ceiling. When Hall's playing, his scoring is considerably softened anyway in terms of ceiling. Still fine, but considerably softened. And then Hall, you just know if you're an owner, and I am in a couple of the formats, I know you are as well. As a Hall owner, you're just holding on for this run to keep going. Not in terms of the role, but because durability is his issue, not his scoring potential. He's shown at Gold Coast he's a fantasy footballer when he's given the opportunity and the role, and he's got both those things right now. So all you're doing as an owner is you're just banking the points, holding on that just for that extra week, for that extra week, for that extra week. And if it keeps going to the end of the year, you look like a genius. But again, it's all about where are you positioned, what's your priorities, and how are you going to get there? And if you're playing catch up on the top ranked guys, I'm telling you, they've probably already got him. So you're not setting yourself apart. Go and look elsewhere. If you're trying to defeat someone in a head-to-head matchup in leagues, now's not that time where you play that negative move. Rather, that's a bit more of a finals type scenario where you're like, I'm going to counter the influence of a Hall. So now for me, it's if you've got that amount of money, look, AFL Fantasy is a little bit cheaper. Like, he's 750 so it's comparable, and a defender forward. So maybe in that format, I'd kind of go.
It's the forward, isn't it, MJ? It's the forward that's so appealing because there's no one else that you really like. That's available. I think Zorko is a great pick in all formats, but you don't even have him for 2 weeks. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. For me, Hall's the only one I'd be open to saying there's still some love to get out of him.
But
Yep.
yeah, no, I think
Again, I feel
the
like you're
boat
doing
is
it
sailed
if you're highly ranked. If you know what I mean, like you're doing
to
it
defend.
You are
Yeah,
doing it. You're doing it negatively, and again, in a way, you're not because you're spending up to
big
200K more
cash.
than those people. So, we got any questions coming through, MJ?
Yeah, man, we got plenty of questions that we can roll through from some of our great
Love to.
Patreons, both the live Patreons that are watching this streaming live. They're going to drop them in the chat, and also those that have thrown it out for us. So, John wants to know some possible low-priced downgrades to consider.
Yep.
He's looking for across the line. Who are some cows that we know that are coming or should get opportunities soon from your eyes? Whether or not we jump early or we get them now. Like at the moment, Bianco and Callum Coleman-Jones are probably the biggest two on the bubble for us this week. Who are some cows that maybe haven't been named yet that we can have some hope that they're coming?
Yeah, well, Newcomb's obviously the one everyone's hoping for. So I think
Basement
everyone will jump on him for every reason. I think Valenti would have to be pretty close as well. MJ, just seeing some of the injuries at Fremantle. We liked what we've heard from him. It's always a little bit concerning when they haven't found their way in yet. So that's always a little bit of a worry. Outside of that, there's always going to be someone, that emerges. I think the thing you have to be careful of is, what's what I'm saying about value, is if you're really relying on a downgrade to be your savior, like it's just, you've got to restructure that and go, I can't take the big dogs. I've just got to take the value. So at this stage, there's no one screaming out for me that I think will come through. They will come through. Absolutely. There's plenty of footy to be played.
Yep.
But at this stage, just keep your ear to the ground and honestly plan, assuming that you don't have a downgrade. You might have to take those cheaper guys and build out that side. And then if they emerge and they play well, you've always got the ability to downgrade that premium and restructure elsewhere. So I've seen it in the past. We've had Witherden, that was the type of play where you went, you know what, this guy's scoring so well at his price that I can take that cash, even though I'm already full premium, and actually go from primos to uber premium. So that stuff will happen. I wouldn't be banking on anything, but as I said, they will come through. At this stage, I don't have anyone that I'm really hanging out for outside of probably Newcomb.
I reckon there's a couple of others that you might pop through soon. I think a Josh Worrell, a defensive forward from the Crows, has been banging the door down. I think it's just a question of time when he gets in. Equally, I think a Luke Pedler from Adelaide. Again, O'Connor, he's just, in my opinion, he's still so far away from being that developed option. So I think there's an opportunity for him in through there, even with Berry coming back this week from concussion. And then it is all about is looking at teams that are rebuilding and regenerating and who haven't been given opportunities yet. That's ultimately the best place to go. If you're not on the Ned Reeves chain, he's certainly a downgrade option for you into R3 or maybe a playing R2. He's right on that mix. And so maybe you held Grundy and maybe you've opened up some DPP with Callum Coleman-Jones already. He's certainly, if you haven't got Jones in SuperCoach, he's going to play for the next couple of weeks without Tom Lynch. Bianco's the obvious one that, again, if you're not on him in your limited trades, Collingwood are clearly, and with the news of Buckley wrapping up at the end of this round of footy, they're clearly all systems in on a rebuild. And so, from my perspective, 100%. There's going to be ones that will pop up, but you just don't bank on them.
Joel Amati would have to be one as well.
Good call.
He really impressed me on the weekend. Again, the beautiful thing about Joel is you can actually wait till he clears the buys and then bring him in. So, it's important. But I think as well, you got to remember is sometimes you can get in trouble trading away your players that are actually playing every week on the bench. Your Harry Joneses, your Scotts. You trade them away for 100K, and then you have no cover. And you really want that 40 points in a future week. So, I think those guys will emerge, but I wouldn't be rushing and doing anything crazy to make stuff happen with them.
Yeah. And again, with cows at this point in time of the year,
you're not banking on them to be on your field for more than a week or two through this next couple of multi-buys. The ideal, again, it might be
you want
more
these guys to be
challenging.
bench guys.
Bench guys
surely.
only. And so for me, yeah,
If you're playing
I don't
anyone,
think
you
so.
want to be playing your Lockie Joneses, your Biancos, your Reeves. Maybe that's the three at the moment. I think, a Poulter you probably want to be
Robertson.
catching out on. Robertson again. Maybe you're catching out this week, but again, we all know the type of guys that we have that we're riding with that are there for us. What else have we got, MJ?
We've got another one. Sriram wants to know in Dream Team. He's looking for some value. Thoughts on Lockie Hunter, Toby Green. We've already shared a little bit about him. And also Kyle Langford. What's your take on those guys? So this is real Dream Team format. So Hunter is forward eligible in AFL Fantasy, but it is mid only in DT. What's your take on those guys?
I think we went through Green. I think there's better options. Hunter's appealing just due to his price.
There's no real ceiling there, is there, though? That's the only thing for me.
MJ. The role's not the role of Lockie Hunter being a genuine premium. Again, it's nice as a forward. It's 90s. He can be 90s. But in his current role, he's not a big dog. So I think you got to really work out what your expectation is. You're paying 600. Are you paying 600 for a 90? Are you paying it for 100? What do you think there? Because again, we just reeled off two guys in Brandon Ellis and Travis Boak that can go 115 for a stretch, and I don't see that in Hunter's current setup.
Yeah.
So I think he's safe and he's decent, but there's nothing extraordinary there. Now Langford has been really impressive.
He's been better than I could have imagined.
He's got 400s in his past 5. He ticks a lot of boxes. The way he plays, it's sort of what we've all sort of expected of him from the flashes he's shown. So it's a credit to him that he's really putting together. It has to be a breakout season. Now,
it is.
Andrew McGrath's gone down.
It's opportunity.
The way Langford plays, he's not really in an under contested ball bursting away. He's sort of one of those guys that does everything well. He's not
solid,
outstanding, but he's capable forward. He can mark. Again, it's one of those ones that it sucks because you're paying about 90K more than you were a month ago. So in this situation, you want to be finding the next Kyle Langford. That's always the challenge. So for me, it's appealing, but as I said with Dangerfield, in 2 weeks, Dangerfield could be within 20, 30K of this guy. And I wouldn't think you've got too many upgrades to go. And especially Langford's on the bye this week. So Dangerfield's going to have one price drop. And you can see where you're at. So for me, I'm going elsewhere. And I'm going probably to Dangerfield.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, Brendan wants to know in Dream Team, Ellis, Kelly, Boak, or Wines? If you can pick one, who are you going to pick? Ellis, Kelly, that's of the Josh variety.
Yeah.
Boak or Wines? Who are you picking, Kane?
Well, if money's not an issue, I'm probably going Kelly, Wines, and then Ellis and Boak is pretty much been my whole week trying to work that out. So just for the cash, and I've seen a bit more ceiling this year. Which I know is sort of the argument I used against Travis Boak, is I'm hoping that switch will be flicked. But at least with Brendan Ellis, he is playing in that dominant fantasy side. I'll probably give the nose to Brandon Ellis. But that's a really close fall. That's not, a big gulf between.
Yeah, I don't think you can go too wrong with him.
I think Kelly, as I said, you're just hoping that there's the ceiling. He's going to go bang. But yeah, I think Wines, what you're paying for, maybe it's pretty close. Maybe there's a slight gap between Kelly and Wines, and then Wines, Ellis and Boak are very much back to back, factoring in value and what's to come. But I do like all of those guys. I don't think you can be too disheartened. They're not obviously uber tier outside of Kelly.
Nope.
They're not going to contend with the Parishes, the McRaes, those type of guys, the Olivers, but they're very good.
Yeah, they're not too bad. I like that. AJS wants to know for AFL Fantasy, is getting Reeves solely for cash generation an okay move? Yes, mate. Even if he's not on field, you're right. That break-even's tasty, AJS. Go for it.
There's probably no ruck structure in a competitive team that he won't be on the field in round 14. So he is helping you there. And I think that's the one where we all need extra help now. So I think you can serve two roles there. And that's the thing, you can't forego cash. Like,
Take
we're
it when it's
halfway
there.
through the season, MJ. We're halfway
Yep.
through. Again, having more cash, I said this to you the other day, having more cash has never made it hard, never made it worse for you in a fantasy game than
Nope.
having less. So
No.
I think if you can strengthen that, especially in a line where you don't get too many guys usually coming through. Funnily enough, we've got an influx of guys at the moment.
Yeah.
But, the likes of Max Lynch should be out once Grundy's back.
Yeah.
Amadi was impressive, but again, I think you can probably wait on him in
Yep.
terms of, again, I cannot take on another round 14 player. So I'd rather pay the extra 30, 40K if he looks brilliant, if he's locked in. I'll concede I have to do that. But yes, you can definitely take on Reeves and just have him sitting there. Again, he'll help you out at one of the buy rounds at least. He'll generate cash, and maybe if you need him to pinch hit for a week, he can do that too.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that's a really fair call, my friend. Last couple of questions. Paul wants to know, a move such as a Heaney to a Haynes in AFL fantasy this week, are these the sort of moves we should be looking for in this format of the game of AFL fantasy?
Yes, in short, they are the moves you should be looking at.
Yeah.
The thing, and I'd be curious to know what Paul's position is, because
Paul's doing pretty well. He's up at the top.
He's doing very well, MJ, more structurally buy-wise.
Okay.
So for me, as an example, I'm very backloaded in round 14. So round 13, for me, was already going to be moving on round 14 players. So pretty much there's 7 round 14 guys that I want to clear in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So my point is, if Paul's in a similar position to that, you're weighing up, does Heaney need to go this week, or is there someone else that can go this week and give Heaney another week? Because for me, against Hawthorn, it's a pretty good matchup for a forward, especially when Heaney's still got that 130, keeping his break even quite low. So if he has to go this week because, you've got guys that are going to make more money or score better, I have no problem with that trade. I just think when Heaney's got one more week and it's a handy matchup, I'd be encouraging holding him and moving someone else on.
Like a Jordan sort of thing. Because,
Jordan, I think Heaney outscores Jordan this week. I know Jordan's playing the Pies, but, he's sort of done his job. And
yeah, he has.
It's just one of those ones you have to make a call sometimes. And if one guy's got a higher break even and he's the guy in his first year playing at the level compared to Isaac Heaney, who has the ceiling, I'm going to go that way. But hey, you might be in a position where you can do that and you're happy with everyone else you've got. So
yeah, well, Paul's just said in the chat, because he's watching this live, he said he's got 13 round 14s before the trade.
Yeah, so he's in a similar position.
It's farm those guys out,
Yeah, it's farm those guys out. So I'd be just saying, okay, I want to get to 18 at a minimum. Find that list, create that list of guys that have to go in the next 2 weeks. Look at the break even, look at the matchup, look at their average. Who needs to go this week, or who should be prioritized going this week? And MJ, the other thing with this is, it's not just who should go, it's what can you get from them. It's going to be more appealing for some people to trade out Jordan over RCD because you can get to a 200K better player. So that's where it all comes into that combination. So weigh that all up and work out what's best for you.
Yeah, I like that. All right, our final question of the podcast, and it is not fantasy footy relevant whatsoever, but I love it. John Bolin wants to know, do you think the Pies should consider moving Brodie Grundy, seeing as though they're heading towards a rebuild? Would you move him on?
It's a hard question, MJ, because I don't know what I'm getting in return. I'm not really sure someone would give up for Brodie Grundy. I'm racking my brain of teams that are crying out for someone. Like clearly Brodie Grundy would be an upgrade on a Scott last set. You know, he is South
Sure.
Australian, you know.
Yeah.
But if you're Collingwood, are you going to accept a first round pick from Port Adelaide that, you know, if they're finishing top 4,
It's a late first round.
we know how compromised the draft is. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those ones where
Draft picks do nothing for Collingwood this year with day cost.
If we want to get real nerdy and get in on that stuff, it makes it challenging.
Yeah.
Personally, if I'm Collingwood, Brodie Grundy is the exact type of guy I want in my
I'll
team
build
as I
around him.
rebuild.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I just think you're not going to get the value for what this guy is. The stuff I've heard about him is that he is well liked, and this stuff can turn really quick. You know, people were saying that, you know, even a year or so ago, you know, does Josh Kennedy just retire? Does a Buddy Franklin retire? Do they move on a Luke Parker? Do they like? And now all of a sudden, these guys are back in the top 8, and I'm not saying that will happen with Collingwood. You know, they've got a lot of things to overcome that, you know, Sydney has a lot of advantages in, but it can turn really quickly, you know? So
What about a team like a Geelong then, who have some
Again, I just don't know
talented
what
kids not getting
compensation is,
chances?
MJ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
That's
see
the
them as
hard
that
thing.
talented though. That's the thing. Like, and that's what I think a little bit of a misnomer about the guys at Geelong is if they were that talented, they would be in the side because they'd be helping them win a premiership right now. I think that's the thing. And now that's not a knock on those guys in terms of can they make it? Again, that Narcles looks like a good player. You know, even guys like Jordan Clark, they look like good players, but clearly in the immediate term, they don't believe they are going to have that desired result. They would rather, you know, go down the route they're going down. You know, it is interesting that Stephen Wells, one of the greatest list managers of all time, left the club on apparently not great terms. So, you know, that obviously says something for him not agreeing with the way that things have been done, if you ask me. But that's what they're doing. So, I just can't see anyone giving the compensation that someone would want for a Brodie Grundy. If you think about the dollars that Grundy's on and what a player, if you're talking about $1 million player or even 900 plus, you know, there are multiple first round picks inside the top 5 or 6. Like, what would you give up for Dusty? What would you give up for Bont? What would you give up for a Christian Petrarca? Right? Like, again, now Grundy's not playing at that level, but that's what
he's
contract
worth.
is.
He'll be valued at. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're not going to get that. So I think you've got to ride with him. And it'd be really interesting, MJ, to, one, who takes on that coaching role, and two, what they do in the run home, because it happens every year. You think there's nothing in trade period or there's nothing in footy that's really going to shake things up, and you know, one story breaks and the ripple effect is out of control.
Well, that's it. A couple of years ago, Lockie Neal pops out of nowhere and is heading to Brisbane. Last year, it was an Adam Treloar. There'll be Joe Danaher was heading to Sydney randomly.
Was nearly gone. Yeah, so
it'll happen again this year, where a guy that nobody anticipates or expects will either get somewhere or will be heavily linked. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how that all kind of ends. Hey, mate, appreciate your work today on this episode.
No worries, MJ. Hope everyone enjoyed
it. Of course.
It was fun. It's always fun.
It was. A big week of footy. Round 13 gets underway Thursday night. And even with the shorter amount of games, it ends Monday evening with the Queen's birthday clash between Collingwood and Melbourne. So it is a long weekend of footy. The positive of that is we get to see lots of different things. You can focus and analyse on each game uniquely, and you don't have to cram as much stuff into the weekend. If you want to go and check out any of the articles that have been dropping right throughout this week, regardless of the format you play, all the links you can find it at coachespanel.tv. It's also there where you can find the Patreon supporter group link, where you get heaps of exclusive access and content, including you get to be a part of the live podcast recordings. You get to have live interaction right along the way. Yep, guys like Paul, AJS, John, Jordan, and a bunch of others have been getting involved in asking questions, and you don't even know they've been asking questions right throughout this episode. Hey, good luck this week. I hope round 13 is kind to you. Remember, best 18. Your teams are on the bye this week. They are locked out at the commencement of that final game of the round. I hope your captain and vice captain flies. I hope you get the cows you need. But from all of us here at the Coaches Panel, well, we'll chat to you soon.